Hi friends, today we're working on the retelling of Frog and Toad, the kite. Now today we're going to do it just a little bit different because we're learning about dialogue, which is when characters are talking in a story. And one of the things that can help us as a reader and to help listeners is to change the voices of the characters as to who's talking. So what I want you to do today with your retelling is to give it a shot. Now we're going to practice reading using character voices, but this is different. This means that we're retelling using the characters' voices. So we have to be very familiar with the story to be able to think about what each character is saying in the story and to be able to use that character's voice. So the first thing we want to do is think about what kind of voice we think the characters in the story would have. Well, we have Toad and we have Frog. And to me, they both are going to have like a croaky sort of voice. And I don't want them to both sound the same because that's not going to help my listener to be able to tell the difference between Frog and Toad. So for some reason, I always think of a Toad having a lower voice than a Frog. So when I do the croaky Toad voice, I'm going to make it sound lower. And when I do the croaky Frog voice, I'm going to make it sound higher. And then that way, my listener can tell the difference between the two. Now, I have to remember, what are some things that the characters say in the story? Well, let's see. Frog wants to keep trying. And so every time Toad comes back from those nasty little birds, he comes back and he says, "Oh, we should just give up, Frog." And Toad always says, "No, let's try again this time." And each time he makes a different suggestion as to how they can get the kite to fly. So I want to keep that in mind is as soon as Toad comes back from talking to those nasty birds who keep laughing at him, that he says, "I want to give up. We should just give up." And every time Frog responds to Toad, he says, "No, let's try it again." Okay, so give it a shot. Even if you only do it one time for each character, I want you to try to get one of the character or both of the characters' voices into your retelling. And again, when we're doing the retelling, we want to get the most important details in our story. We want to tell it in story format. And that means we're not doing an interview, but we're not going through those questions that we've already answered, but we're keeping them in the right order of the story. Okay? All right, so here we go. Frog and Toad wanted to go out and fly a kite one day. And Frog says to Toad, "Go run with the kite." Toad says, "Okay." And when the kite does not go in the air, the little birds that are in the meadow start laughing. "That kite's never gonna fly." And Toad goes back to Frog and says, "We should just give up. This kite's never going to fly." And Frog says, "Yeah, this time, wave it over your head, Toad. Maybe that time it'll fly." So Toad picks up the kite and he runs and he waves it over his head and it doesn't fly. And so the birds again laugh. "You should just give up." So Toad returns back to Frog and he says, "Oh, this kite's never gonna fly. We should just give up." And Frog says to Toad, what does Frog say to Toad? Oh, that's right. He says, "Wave it over your head and run, Toad." So Toad does. Toad runs and he waves it over his head. And again, it does not fly. And the birds, they laugh at Toad and they say, "You should just give up." So Toad returns back to Frog and he says, "We should just give up." And Frog says, "No, we've almost got it. You need to run, wave it over your head, jump up and down and yell, 'Up, kite, up.'" And so Toad does exactly that. And he runs and he waves it over his head and he yells, "Up, kite, up." And the kite goes up into the air and flies. And of course, those birds, without something to laugh at, they leave. And Frog and Toad enjoy watching their kite fly higher than the birds. So, see how I went back and forth with my voices? give it a shot. It is tricky to keep track of the story, but if you want to keep the book nearby, so long as you're not reading it, you may. That'll help you to keep the order. You could even write some notes to yourself as to first he runs, then he waves it over his head, then he jumps, and then he yells up, kite, up. That might help you with your retelling also. Now, the next part we need to do after you record yourself retelling this story is I want you to think, what's the author's purpose of the story? Why did the author write this book? What did we learn? Remember, when we're thinking of author's purpose, we're thinking about what we learned in the story. Well, I learned never to give up. Because while Toad wanted to keep giving up, Frog said, no, 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 we're going to keep trying. We're going to get it. And eventually they do. And so I think the author's purpose was to teach me the lesson that I should keep trying. But there's always other ideas as to what the author's purpose was, because maybe that's how I interpret it. But maybe you think it means something else. So however you decide this book, what this book means and what the author's purpose is, that's what I want you to write about. Do you think maybe the author's purpose was to show that we shouldn't make fun of people, like the birds? Or was it about how much fun it is to fly a kite? Or about how difficult it is to fly a kite? I don't know, but I'm sure we could figure it out, and we could have different points of the story to support our idea. That's what your job is.